Hey everyone, I want to talk about jobs for a minute. This year has been pretty much a musical chairs when it comes to jobs in legal tech. We've seen a lot of people moving from one position to another, coming from outside of legal tech into legal tech, from firm to a startup, from in-house to established company. A lot of movement in the legal tech market. And also, a question we get here at Legal Tech Hub a lot is, how do I get into legal tech? And the only thing I can answer to that is there is no one pathway to do it. Everyone I have met has a different route of how they got here. And there's no one definition of a legal tech job either. The market is changing so quickly. We've seen so many jobs or titles or roles that didn't exist even a year ago open up. And so if you're looking for your next job, Legal Tech Hub runs legal tech jobs. That's the URL, legaltechjobs.com. So if you're looking for your next legal tech job, or if it's the end of the year, a lot of people make a move after January 1, or if your New Year's resolution is to get a new job. So many, I've been there in my past. Now is your time. There's so much opportunity out there. Go to legaltechjobs.com and you will see everybody that we are aware of that is hiring. People give us their jobs that they are looking for great candidates for, and we know there are great candidates out there looking for jobs. So we want to help match you all up. It's a free website. Feel free to peruse it and maybe make your New Year's resolution come true. Or if you're just feeling like there's something more for you out there, there probably is. So check out Legal Tech Jobs and find your next great career. That's how we all got to where we are now. Try something new, put it out there. You never know what'll happen. And good luck. Happy job hunting.
Welcome to the Geek in Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Marlene Gaybauer.
And I'm Greg Lambert.
This week, we welcome Jennifer McIver, Associate Director of Legal Operations and Industry Insights at Wolters Kluwer ELM Solutions.
It's quite a mouthful on your business card, I'm sure.
I did that pretty well. I was pretty impressed.
I'm impressed. I usually shorten it. Let's drop the associate. Let's drop the director. It's just legal ops and industry insights.
There we go. So Jennifer, you've not only you got the experience there at Wolters Kluwer with the ELM solutions, your earlier legal ops and strategy role at places like LawView and Thomson Reuters played a role in getting you where you are today. Do you mind just walking us through your path into legal operations and legal tech, and what pulled you toward more of this industry insights lane of our profession?
Yeah, I'm definitely a path that I wasn't expecting. It's really far from where I was in college. I wanted to be a forensic pathologist. I was pre-med. I thought it'd be great to actually, work with cadavers that couldn't talk back. But yet here I am sitting on a podcast having a conversation, right? And
I don't know. Some people might think that there's a parallel line there.
We're not
really,
dead yet.
yeah. But really, as we take a step back, I was a practicing attorney. I did the billable hour thing. I was an associate. I was getting to that partnership time. Honestly, it wasn't for me. And one day I got really frustrated. And all of this came out of me walking into my office, slamming the door, and literally Googling, what else can I do with my law degree? And a job came up on Indeed.com, out of nowhere. And it was from Thomson Reuters. It was for implementing legal tech. They wanted attorneys. I had never taught software. I had never worked in software. Our law firm was so, I don't know, not there yet that I really didn't even use software, right? Other than, the standard Microsoft type of tools. So for me, that's where it started. And really the pathway has just built on it. I went from implementing, I put over 100 people on the system at Legal Tracker. And then I went to being customer success and managing the customer success team with some of the really mega top clients, enterprise clients. And then it moved into product. And that's really where the transition to LawView went. I really worked from the US side to being the strategy support as they were launching their product in the US. But as I did that, it was during COVID. And during COVID, New Zealand was really locked down, and that's where the most of the leadership was for LawView. And so I became the person in the US that was going to the events, having the conversations. And so really when you just grab all of the knowledge that I'd pulled in and then all of those conversations I was having, when this offer, in this particular role was posted by Wolters Kluwer, it just seemed like a natural fit to just pull everything together.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more slamming doors and Googling what I can do next?
I mean, we're not going to talk about that because I have a feeling folks are going to. No, I'm kidding. No, it's actually been
That's after the podcast, Greg.
right, right. Yeah. No, it's been really great. I've had a lot of fun and I'm learning even more. And I think that's what's really just I love it is the more conversations you have and the more knowledge you gather, I feel like it just goes up exponentially. And so really that's my role is to help facilitate those conversations, internally in the industry with our clients because that's how we're getting the good stuff to figure out how we can help people move forward.
So I can already tell I am talking to another data nerd.
Yeah.
And so I am very interested in hearing your answer to this next question. Jennifer, you spent a lot of time looking at benchmarks and data from tools like LegalView and talking with legal departments about spend and matter management performance. What are the smartest legal ops teams doing with their data right now to shift from cost center to a true strategic partner?
I have kind of two parts to that. I think first with their own data, they're really working on visibility. And I think that's a big piece. I mean, we've had ELM solutions, we've had, e-billing contract management solutions. We've had all of these tools that are really absorbing, right? And kind of just taking in that data. But quite often, no one's using it. No one's bringing it out into usable, and being visible. And I think that that's where you've seen the biggest shift is the folks that are getting in there and creating dashboards that aren't just everything thrown up, but ones that are tying into their KPIs, that are tying into their business strategies. And I think also really working with solution providers that are going in that same path. For example, we spend a lot of time here with Time Metrics 360 putting in our data analytics and getting into Power BI and getting everything transitioned to Power BI because that's not only making it visible and usable, but it's also getting comfortable now. And I think that's the other piece that I wanted to go is I think that the teams that are doing well are the ones that are being comfortable with having the visibility of the data to see it, to use it, to talk about it. And I just want to add one more thing, and that is pulling in external data. I think that's the other piece. And you mentioned, Marlene, LegalView. LegalView Dynamic Insights is a great example of that industry benchmark data. You can look at your own and you can know that we've increased, law firm rates have increased, 10%, 12%. But without looking at external data, you don't know if that's the right path. You don't know if that's expected. So I think really the teams that are doing well is they're harnessing their own, they're making it visible, they're putting it into a visibility that everybody within the organization can ingest and use and appreciate. And then they're pulling in that external data as well.
Are they struggling with getting the right data and surfacing the right data in order to, to do those types of analytics?
I think that's a great and I feel like that comes into some of the other things that we were going to talk about today because I think that AI has really, really brought that out with the struggle with the data. Everybody wants those, kind of easy button, I'm going to use AI. And you realize that your data is scattered and your data isn't the best. And that's where I think we have great industry organizations like Legal Data Intelligence that are really educating people about having good data and how to bring that forward. And I think you can really see teams now that are starting to do well are the ones that have taken the time to go back and to really see where is my data located? What data do I have? And a lot of times it's not needing all of the data that you have and it's going back and saying, let's get this a little bit more simplistic. I might only need 6 or 7 data fields to tell a really, really good story. I don't need 87. I remember implementing clients years ago where, you create these matter templates and, you create the intake form and they wanted to require so many fields and so much data. And the text field, don't even get me going on the text field because that's just a no-go anywhere. But no one entered the data and they're like wondering why, or it was always other. By the way, never do an other category, right?
The
Yeah.
dreaded other, yes.
Right.
General.
And so I think that's where I think, Marlene, it's correct that people are struggling. And that's where I think this kind of got to my crystal ball question later, right? Where it's
Save it,
like,
save it, save it.
save it, save it. We're done. We're done. No crystal balls now.
I did have another follow-up, but you're saying that visibility is important. So are the groups that you're working with, are they sort of now making this data more accessible to, sort of outside their departments so that different groups can use this and sort of piece it together the way they need it. They can actually highlight things themselves.
Absolutely. And I think you're seeing a lot of more taking into consideration persona based, when you're looking at, say, dashboards or data, what the legal ops team needs and looks at is very different than what a GC needs to look at, right? And it's very different than what maybe the finance team. And I think that's a great example. I think a lot more of the teams are bringing in like finance teams or other of their large, business verticals, maybe sales organizations. You see that a lot with contracts, right? In those sales organizations, you're showing the data. I think legal's always been thought of as that black hole, right? Everything goes in, nothing comes out. We say no all the time. But data is actually showing the visibility that legal is very productive. Legal is helping the company move forward. And I think by going into the realms of different personas, that's absolutely helping that strategic partnership.
Before I follow up with some AI questions for you, I want to go back just a little bit and talk about your team there, Wolters Kluwer ELM Solutions, and your clients are legal ops and in-house teams. What's the value that they get from working with your team? What's
Yeah.
kind of your mission?
Yeah, the mission is to, our mission really is to help make their legal team, better. And it's to help their legal team become that strategic partner within their organization. And there's so many levels that you can do that, whether it's spend control through invoice review, through making sure the work is getting done on budget, on time. It's also, again, the visibility of what matters are coming in, what matters are coming out, and really being a partner to the rest of the organization, whether it's us working with our clients on integrations, for example, between our solutions and other solutions to really pull that information together. But ultimately, we want to make the legal teams that strategic business partner. We don't want that black hole, right? We don't want that department to know. And that's really what we're trying to get to and make sure that it's as automated and streamlined as possible.
Okay. All right, now on to our obligatory AI discussion. So I I know that you've been digging into agentic AI when it comes to legal ops and not just about the automation part of it, but kind of looking more as AI as a kind of this teammate that can help the legal ops team negotiate rates, review the invoices, work on the workflows. So let me ask you from your vantage point, what's actually real and working today and versus what feels more like hype still?
Kind of giggle to myself as you say teammates. We have an internal joke, and I kind of started it about Copilot being my boyfriend. And that's my real teammate now because I think I use Copilot so much through the day and I have these interactions. I'm remote, right? So
Yeah.
when I'm
Copilot's my
going
work
through,
husband.
yeah, that's
I was gonna
exactly.
say this is gonna be the tagline. Okay.
It really is, it really is. But that really does flow into the thought about teammates. I think the great thing about AI right now, and agentic AI even, is that it is simple enough, especially if you're using enterprise tools or if technology, your solutions are rolling it out, to be able to create automations and efficiencies that I think a lot of legal teams haven't had the resources, the monetary dollars, or even the time to do so. To create an agent for simple workflows. I did it, for example, for every time I go to an event, I take a lot of notes and then I write up the notes, key takeaways. I have an email that I put out. I have, some different things that I do internally. I have an agent now that I'm working on, and I haven't spent that a lot of time, and it's almost perfect. I can take those notes, pull the takeaways, right? I still have to review it, but it's giving me the ability to get a lot of time back in a little bit of effort. And I think that's the big thing. Initially, I think when AI rolled out, everybody was just like, oh, it's too much. I can't do it. And I think that's where agentic AI, I think it is real. And I think that, some of the big things like it's going to kill the billable hour, that to me is where the hype is. But I think you're going to see that it's going to take off in those smaller bits more and more. And especially as the legal tools are really enabling that. we just had our Amplify user conference and we did a thing with product where we gave everybody poker chips and we had some innovative options where people could vote, with poker chips. And the top one was a legal ops AI agent studio. That was the number one. So, within T360, Timemetrics 360, within Passport, within our tools, give us a way to create some agents on ourselves, right? To do that. And I think that that's really what people are going to look for is that's how AI is going to create quick wins that we just otherwise aren't going to have. So I don't know if it's going to be a complete, let's do the end-to-end negotiation. My colleague thinks so. I don't know. I'm a little bit on the fence on that one. But I do think that you're going to see things that you would have an assistant do, things that you would have an entry level analyst do. I think you're going to see those workflows really coming through with agentic AI.
Are you finding your clients to be much more receptive to AI than they were, say, a year ago?
I think our clients have actually been really receptive from the beginning. I think the problem, or maybe the roadblock per se, has been the understanding from an internal standpoint on the security issues, the privacy issues. I think the roadblocks have been internally. A lot of our clients have actual like AI boards or AI community or committees that they have to go through in order to even use AI in an existing solution. So I think that that's really been the hesitance, moving forward. I think a lot of attorneys, which is weird because I'm one, we don't like change, right? We don't like doing it, but I think you're seeing so many poor people leaning in.
Yeah, the best thing we can do to speed this up is let's create a committee.
I know. A committee that, by the way, and I think somebody brought this up, and my colleague, actually, Vince Ventrella, brought this up, a committee that probably doesn't even use AI itself.
He's probably not wrong.
So, a lot of your work explores panel management and AFAs and vendor relationships. And this is going to be a two-part question, and I'll probably have a follow-up. So when you talk to GCs and general legal ops leaders, in terms of law firm pricing, are they sort of really looking for alternative pricing? I know are they are they reexamining their, what they think of as value pricing, or is it just like, okay, give me the discount off the billable hour? And the second part of the question is what is sort of frustrating them about panel performance? And that can be in relation to sort of AI use or anything else.
Yeah, so good questions. And I think that you have legal ops teams that are on very opposite ends of the spectrums. And I think that's something that corporate legal teams do quite often. They go all one way or the other. So, for example, we're going to make this very process oriented. We want timekeeper rates at a certain time. You have to give them to us here. We don't accept more than 3%. We don't, it's very regimented. And they don't reach out to their law firms and say, hey, let's talk about this. And I think that's one extreme where you're not seeing movement and you're seeing frustration with rate increases, but there's no movement because there's no communication, there's no transparency, there's no proactive reaching out and really trying something else. On the flip side, you have legal ops teams that are going completely opposite, right? We're not going to do panels anymore. We know that if we're having conversations at like a matter level, that we're going to get the best rates. We're going to have, this information. We're going to RFP everything, by the way. That's going to be the opposite side, which to me is just as process oriented. It's almost like a CYA kind of situation almost, right? And so I feel like it's that extremes that's really happening at the corporate legal departments. And I think the ones that are doing well and like law firms that are really working well with the corporate legal departments are those that are having the conversation, that are bringing to the table, look at, this is what we're up against on the corporate legal side this year. We have to really look at our spending. And then you have the conversation about, do we need to have that most senior partner on everything, right? Are there certain matters that might be a little bit, lower risk, higher volume that maybe we can bring in some different staffing and really do it differently to get it into a cost bracket that makes a little bit more sense, right, for the work? And I think that's where you're really seeing the differences in the conversations happening that are working. But as people stay regimented, there's just that continued frustration and they're going up and it's just not going to move, right? Somebody has to take the burden to have that conversation. And I really do think that it has to be at least initially on the corporate legal department side because I know I've talked to a lot of law firm folks, and you guys can, definitely agree or disagree with me on this. But if a company comes to you and says, a corporate legal department says, hey, these are our programs, these are our processes, this is what we want you to follow. Okay, we'll follow them, right? Why do we need to come and be inventive, or why do we need to come and be, innovative and give you something different? Some may, but I think that that's just something that you see is if the corporate legal department doesn't take that burden, it's not going to change.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that could be a a combined effort, so that it's
Yeah.
not just like one. It's not just like the firm's responsibility. It's not just the corporation's responsibility. It's both of them kind of coming together on that. My follow-up question was, do you find, I heard you say we're moving away from panels, and is there any thought in terms of like, okay, we want to do this because if we consolidate the work, these firms that we have doing the work are looking at looking at us more holistically as opposed to kind of matter by matter in a certain type of sector.
I think with panel firms, you're seeing a lot of shifts. If you go back, 5, even 10 years ago, there was that initial, firm consolidation kind of, I feel like, era in legal operations. And I think a lot of people realized, a lot of teams realized that they condensed too far. And what happened is you think that, hey, I've got these really great 10 firms, but they're probably 10 really large firms that do great work, across the board. They can do everything at a premium price. And so all of the work is going there. And then you assume that you're getting those volume discounts. You assume that you're getting the best rates. But when you start using benchmarking tools, and that's, something that we've definitely been talking a lot about with folks in the industry this year through the use of dynamic insights, you can absolutely see that for certain types of work, you're kind of getting hosed, excuse me for saying it, right? You're not getting the best prices. And so it really is, when I say that people are moving away from panels, I think that you see inherently in your data that 80% of your spend probably is going to a good chunk of the same firms. So the question might not be, do we formalize a panel process, but it might be, how do we otherwise work with our law firms to gain the value that we're probably already getting by sending them a decent amount of work? And how do we take that deeper? How do we move past just negotiating volume discounts to actually getting more value and really looking into finding what value is? And I think that's where a lot of teams are right now, is what is that value? So that way we can look something a little bit different than rates.
There was a conversation on LinkedIn this week that I chimed in on and talked about the incentives that in-house attorneys have, as corporate counsel have, and that being inventive, being creative with their outside law firms is not something that's incentivized. It's more, show me a number. What was my discount? And so there's, even if, in fact, I've seen law firms actually get punished for coming up with creative, hey, we think this may be a better way for us to work together. Do you think there's a way to change the incentives for in-house to be more receptive to these more innovative ways of delivering services and looking maybe more at outcomes rather than hours? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you do to help?
I think it's that, going back to, it's defining what value is. I think too many people are looking at the numbers on a spreadsheet. And I say spreadsheet because I feel like that's what a lot of legal teams are
Yeah.
still doing with their costs and their spend, And so, and really looking at it from that kind of accountant, kind of raw, tangible numbers. I think if you get in and start defining value is and what partnership is, there's a lot of other initiatives, right, that are going towards that. And I think that's, if I raised a magic wand, right, is to have everybody come in and talk about what the value is. And I don't think there is a standardized what is value. When you talk to some teams,
Nope.
it might be, how are we growing the pipeline for, more diverse attorneys and more diverse work. For others, it's how are we partnering together on technology? We know AI is going to be great. What can we do to partner? I think a lot of corporate legal departments know that for the whole, bet the company type matters, right? Or save the company type matters. They're going to pay those premiums. It's really breaking it out and looking at what are the other things that we can get with our law firms and how can we partner.
Yeah, that ties in well with you just recently wrote the ELM Insider article on the 2025 insight or trends, which I found to be a very good read. So thank you for putting that out. You just mentioned it, where you're shifting away from vendor management to partnerships. So based on your discussions that you've had with these legal op leaders, what really defines a good law firm partnership with them?
Yeah, I think communication and transparency and in both directions. I think
Yeah. Now, what else?
I know, it's too blank. But let me kind of dive into that a little bit and give you an example because I think that the specific examples are really what helps here. Working with a client that does probably 80% AFAs, and it's really interesting because you always wonder, is it risky, right? And if you enter into that new AFA, I think a lot of corporate legal departments are really hesitant to take the risk. And so in this case, they have open communication where if a matter's going, and if it just doesn't look like that arrangement works, either party is reaching out and having that conversation. So that way you're not getting into the invoice comes in over budget. I'm going to reject the invoice, right? You went over budget, but you're really having that mutual conversation about is this working and how do we need to change that? So I think that's, Greg, hopefully that gets you over, when I say open communication buzzwordy, right? It gets you into that more really taking that example and diving in. I think the other thing is really you see a lot more corporate legal departments spending time on educating and working with their law firms about their business. And I think that's another area when you're talking about getting better outcomes, you're talking about understanding how to maybe staff matters or the risk and the importance that a law firm maybe should put on certain types of matters. By getting out there and having those sessions, that gives more intuition to the law firm to really service, I think, the clients and the corporate legal departments better. So you're seeing a lot. I know we're seeing a lot of our clients doing like law firm days. And they're not just bringing in that relationship partner, they're bringing in associates that are key on their matters. They're bringing others to really get in there and to learn about the business, to talk to the people they've been working with, and to really continue to build that. Because when you go to the outcomes, right, that's how you start getting to the better outcomes, is if you have more of that knowledge. And I think, again, the transparency back and forth and really being vulnerable back and forth. I think that the greatest relationships are with a law firm are coming back and they're actually rating the in-house attorneys they're working with. And I find that really interesting. Most don't want to hear that. But when you hear that you're not being responsive or you hear that you're really, really confusing me on the scope, that's going to actually drive better outcomes too.
Do on the law firm days, do the lawyers bill for their time while they're there?
And the travel time and double bill it to another client as they're going, right?
There we go.
I'm curious, I mean, are allied professionals part of those lawyer days?
That's a great question, and I'm not quite sure on that. I haven't necessarily been, as the tech provider, I haven't been invited into those days, but I do know that we do have a lot of companies that are starting to put additional legal service professionals on their panels even for certain types of work, which I find really fascinating. The panels I think are evolving into not just your top tier law firms, but law firms for the purpose of types of work. And I think going back to our conversation about how, we had that big push for the, condensing the panels and getting it down to 10, 20 law firms, you're seeing people now expand it, but I think you're seeing people expand it for the purpose or teams expanding it to be fit for the purpose. And that's where other service providers are definitely coming into play.
So before we wrap up and get to our crystal ball question, it's really nice to be talking with someone that puts out a lot of content for people to use. But let me flip that on you. Where do you go for the content to kind of help you keep up with things?
So I'll admit from like an AI side, if we go to AI, I'm really spoiled. I have my own internal like AI expert, as I call it. I mentioned him earlier, Vince Venturella. He's amazing. He keeps up with it and then I catch up with him. So I tend to do a lot of that. I'm not the best, and this is me being, vulnerable and transparent at keeping up with, podcasts. And I do listen to your guys's, by the way, but, keeping up with a lot of podcasts and external resources. When they look interesting to me, I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, I'll see a few, I'll jump out, I'll do it. I might join a newsletter. And so I do get it that way. But the majority of the time, it's from having conversations, whether it's conversations just like this, whether it's industry conversations at events, or I do have a lot of connections where we do virtual coffees. I keep up with a lot of folks, legal tech startups. I'll be honest, I have some great frenemies, as I call them, and I do keep up with them and we do have conversations, obviously within boundaries, but we do have those conversations. And so for me, it's just talking and really just pulling that together. And I mean, I'll be transparent, the article that I wrote, that you mentioned in ELM Insider, that was a combination of all of the notes and all of the bullet points and all of the information that I tracked throughout the entire year this year from events, from the conversations we had. And my boyfriend then got involved and, we put together a little bit of a combination.
Yeah, yeah. That work husband helps out a lot.
So, Jennifer, I'm going to pose our crystal ball question to you. So, for law firms and in-house counsel, that are listening along with us, if they want to be ready for the next 3 to 5 years of AI data and legal ops transformation, what are the 1 or 2 moves that you think they should make this year, or let's say 2026, since we only have less than a month to go, so they're not scrambling later?
I think if legal ops teams, law firms, anybody wants to move forward, and I alluded to this earlier, it's data first. It's centralizing your data, making sure that you have the data you're collecting is usable data that matters. I think that is huge. I think you're going to see teams lag if they're not really focusing on that. And sometimes that can be a really heavy lift, but I think that that's really important. And then the next is just starting now with transparency and communication. Greg, I know you don't like the buzzwords there, but I think that it absolutely is having those conversations now with law firms, with other legal service providers, with the ecosystem, being transparent with this is what we're struggling with, this is what we need help with, whether that's from a financial budget sense, and cost savings, or whether that's even from technology. I think that, having those conversations now, you can position yourself to have better partnerships to move forward with AI in the future. And then last but not least, I'm going to sneak a third in on you, Marlene. And that's really going to be examining your expertise within your team. And I think that 2026 is really going to be the year of redefining the role within legal operations, whether that's on the law firm side with, legal operation, innovation, knowledge management, or whether it's on the law firm side. I think really looking at, the folks that are participating and contributing and what skills do they have to bring the data together, to resource that and to really leverage AI and be passionate about it in order to move things forward. So I think you're going to see a lot of shifts this year coming up in 2026 on the roles and how people are hiring.
Yeah. Just for the record, I love transparency and communication. It's just we're so bad at it.
It's buzzwords unless you give actual, it really is, unless you dive into it. And I catch myself saying it a lot, but what I really mean is to dig deeper, right? And to give those examples.
All right. Well, Jennifer McIver from ELM Solutions, Wolters Kluwer, thank you very much for coming on and having such a great conversation with us.
Yeah, thank you.
I loved it. Thank you guys for the great questions and so for some laughs too, and for, making my work husband now knowledgeable to all.
And thanks to all of you, our listeners, for taking the time to listen to the Geek and Review podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn and Blue Sky.
And Jennifer, for listeners who want to follow your work, what's the best place to find you and your newsletter?
I absolutely think LinkedIn, whether you're following me personally or whether you're following ELM Solutions, the ELM Insider, those are the best place to be. And definitely respond. If you disagree with me or if you have any further questions, reach out because I love, again, to have those conversations. That's how we learn and that's how we're able to convey some change.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thank you very much, Jerry.
All right, thanks, Jerry. Bye, everybody.
Bye.